Ladies and gentlemen, every great success story you've ever heard started with something small. A single decision, a small step, a tiny win. And yet most people overlook these small victories because they don't seem significant in the moment. They believe success comes in one giant leap, one major breakthrough. But the truth is, big wins are nothing more than an accumulation of small, consistent actions done over time. Think about the power of compounding. It's not the one-time effort that changes your life. It's what you do daily that creates the transformation. If you improve just 1% every day, that improvement compounds, it builds on itself, and before you know it, you're at a level you once thought was impossible. The problem is most people quit before they see results. They go to the gym for a week, don't see a six-pack, and stop. They start a new habit, miss a day, and decide they've failed. But success doesn't work like that. It's not about massive action once. It's about small actions repeated relentlessly. It's about making choices that seem insignificant today but stack up over time into something extraordinary. Every time you choose to wake up early instead of hitting snooze, that's a tiny win. Every time you choose to eat something nutritious instead of junk, that's a tiny win. Every time you read a book instead of scrolling mindlessly, that's a tiny win. And those wins, they start to shape your identity. Because when you win a little, you start to believe in yourself a little more. And belief is what fuels action. Action fuels progress. Progress fuels momentum. And momentum is what leads to massive success. It doesn't matter how small you start. What matters is that you start and that you keep going. The habits you build, the choices you make, the small disciplines you practice, they are laying the foundation for the life you want. So don't chase the big win, chase consistency, chase the habit of winning every single day, no matter how small the victory may seem, because when you look back, you'll realize it was never one big breakthrough that changed everything. It was the power of tiny wins compounding over time that built the success you always dreamed of. Every great achievement, every remarkable success story, and every seemingly overnight triumph is built on a foundation of small, consistent victories. People often believe that success comes from one giant leap, one breakthrough moment that changes everything. But if you look closer, you'll see that every big win is actually a series of tiny wins stacked together over time. Think about the greatest athletes, the most successful entrepreneurs, the most disciplined individuals. They didn't wake up one day at the peak of their potential. They didn't achieve greatness in a single defining moment. Instead, they committed to small, intentional actions daily. They embraced the tiny wins that most people overlook. A writer doesn't create a masterpiece in one sitting. They write a few hundred words each day. A runner doesn't suddenly complete a marathon. They train consistently, running a little farther each week. A successful entrepreneur doesn't build a thriving business overnight. They make small, smart decisions daily, refining their craft, learning from failures, and pushing forward. The reason small wins matter is because they create momentum. Each small victory builds confidence, and that confidence leads to action. When you succeed in one small way, waking up early, choosing a healthy meal, completing a workout, reading for 10 minutes, you send a signal to yourself that you are capable. That belief starts to grow, and as it does, your actions align with that belief. You start to see yourself as the kind of person who is disciplined, who follows through, who doesn't quit. Small wins also eliminate the feeling of being overwhelmed. When people set out to achieve a goal, they often focus on the massive gap between where they are and where they want to be. This can feel intimidating, discouraging, even paralyzing. But when you shift your focus to small wins, everything changes. Instead of thinking about running a marathon, you focus on running a mile. Instead of trying to transform your entire diet, you focus on making one healthy choice at a time. Instead of aiming to read 50 books in a year, you focus on reading a few pages today. Progress happens in the smallest steps. And what starts as tiny wins eventually turns into habits. These habits, repeated over time, create lasting change. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment or a burst of motivation. You just need to take one small step forward. That step turns into another, and before you know it, you're further ahead than you ever imagined. Every time you choose action over excuses, effort over laziness, discipline over comfort, you win. And every time you win, no matter how small, you move closer to your ultimate goal. It's not about making one massive leap towards success. It's about stacking small wins day after day until they turn into something extraordinary. Improvement isn't about drastic changes overnight. It's about small, consistent efforts that compound over time. Just like money grows through compound interest, habits, skills, and progress grow when you invest in them daily. The power of compounding means that even the smallest positive changes, when repeated consistently, lead to extraordinary results. Imagine a plane taking off and adjusting its course by just a few degrees. At first, the shift is almost unnoticeable, but over hundreds or thousands of miles, that tiny adjustment leads to an entirely different destination. The same principle applies to personal growth. Improving by just 1% each day might seem insignificant in the moment, but over weeks, months, and years, it creates a transformation beyond what most people believe is possible. The challenge most people face is that they expect immediate results. They go to the gym for a week and get frustrated when they don't see visible changes. They start a new habit, miss a day, and feel like they've failed. But success isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. The people who achieve lasting success are the ones who understand that small efforts, repeated over time, create unstoppable momentum. Compounding works in both directions. Just as small positive actions build upon each other, small negative choices do the same. Skipping one workout doesn't seem like a big deal, but when it turns into a habit of skipping workouts, the results become obvious. Eating one unhealthy meal won't make a difference, but consistently making poor choices leads to noticeable consequences. Every decision you make, big or small, compounds over time, shaping the person you become. The key to making compounding work in your favor is patience. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in a year, but overestimate what they can do in a day. They want instant gratification, but true success is built slowly. The first few weeks or months of a new habit might not show dramatic results, but those who stay consistent eventually reach a tipping point where progress becomes undeniable. Think about learning a new skill. At first, it's frustrating, the progress is slow, and it feels like you're not improving. But if you practice a little each day, something incredible happens. Your brain starts making stronger connections, your movements become smoother, and before you know it, you've mastered something that once seemed impossible. Momentum is the hidden force behind compounding. When you start seeing results, even small ones, motivation kicks in. One healthy choice makes it easier to make another. One productive day leads to another. The hardest part is getting started, but once progress compounds, it becomes easier to keep going. What seems like an insignificant effort today is actually a powerful investment in your future. The small things add up. The daily actions matter. And when you stick with them long enough, they create results that are far greater than the sum of their parts. Success isn't about making one massive effort. It's about the small daily actions that compound over time. Many people believe they need to go all in, give maximum effort, and make drastic changes to achieve their goals. But the truth is, real progress comes from being consistent, not from occasional bursts of intensity. The people who reach the top in any field aren't necessarily the most talented or the hardest workers in a single moment. They're the ones who show up every day, doing the small things that others ignore. Consistency beats intensity because habits are what shape outcomes. If someone works out for 5 hours straight but then skips the gym for a month, they won't see results. But if they exercise for just 30 minutes every day, their body will transform over time. The same applies to any area of life. A writer who writes a little each day will finish a book faster than someone who writes for hours one day and then stops for weeks. A musician who practices consistently will improve far more than one who plays intensely but infrequently. The problem with relying on intensity is that it's unsustainable. Motivation fades, energy levels fluctuate, and life gets busy. If success depends on extreme effort, people burn out before they ever reach their goal. But consistency removes the pressure. It allows progress to build naturally without needing massive energy all at once. Small, repeated actions create momentum, and momentum is what makes success inevitable. Another reason consistency is more powerful than intensity is that it rewires identity. When people do something every day, no matter how small, they start seeing themselves differently. A person who reads 10 pages a day becomes a reader. A person who meditates for 5 minutes each morning becomes someone who prioritizes mindfulness. A person who saves a small amount of money each month becomes financially disciplined. These small actions reinforce a new identity, and identity is what drives lasting behavior change. People often wait for motivation to take action, but consistency works in reverse. Action creates motivation. When someone shows up every day and does the work, even when they don't feel like it, they start seeing progress. And when they see progress, they feel more motivated to keep going. It's not about waiting for the right moment or the perfect plan. It's about taking small steps every day, knowing that those steps will add up over time. The key to making consistency work is setting the bar low enough to stay on track. Instead of trying to read a whole book in a day, commit to reading just one page. Instead of planning an intense 2-hour workout, start with 10 minutes. Instead of trying to completely change a diet overnight, make one healthier choice at a time. Small efforts feel easy, but they lead to real transformation when repeated over time. The people who achieve lasting success are not the ones who push the hardest for a short time. They're the ones who show up every day, no matter what, and do the work even when no one is watching. They understand that consistency is the true secret to greatness. Small wins are more than just steps toward a goal. They shape identity. Every action a person takes is a vote for the kind of person they are becoming. When people focus on tiny wins, they reinforce a new self-perception, one that aligns with their goals and values. It's not just about what they do, it's about who they believe they are. When someone consistently makes positive choices, even small ones, they begin to see themselves differently. A person who exercises for 10 minutes every morning starts to believe they are the kind of person who prioritizes health. Someone who reads a few pages of a book daily starts identifying as a reader. A person who wakes up early consistently begins to see themselves as disciplined. These tiny wins may seem insignificant, but they send powerful signals to the brain, reinforcing an identity shift. The biggest mistake people make when trying to change is relying on willpower alone. They focus on a goal without changing how they see themselves. They might try to force themselves to wake up early, eat healthier, or be more productive. But if they still see themselves as someone who struggles with discipline, they will eventually revert to old habits. True transformation happens when identity shifts. Instead of forcing an action, they must prove to themselves that they are already the kind of person who does it naturally. The key to making identity-based change work is repetition. The more a person wins, even in small ways, the stronger their belief in themselves becomes. It's not about one perfect day of discipline. It's about small moments of discipline repeated over time. Each decision builds evidence. Each choice strengthens the identity. It's not about saying, I want to be a disciplined person. It's about proving it with consistent action. Failure often happens because people set their goals too far from their identity. They say they want to be fit, but deep down, they still see themselves as someone who struggles with exercise. They say they want to be productive, but they identify as someone who procrastinates. No matter how much they push, if their identity doesn't match their goal, they will always fall back into old habits. The solution isn't forcing change, it's shifting how they see themselves through small wins that reinforce a new reality. This is why the smallest victories matter. Every time someone chooses to make their bed in the morning, they are reinforcing discipline. Every time they choose to drink water instead of soda, they are proving they can make healthy choices. Every time they show up to work with focus, they are building the identity of a productive person. These moments might seem small, but they add up to something powerful. Over time, small wins become habits, and habits become identity. The brain stops seeing these actions as effort and starts seeing them as part of who the person is. When that happens, success is no longer a struggle, it becomes natural. The more someone wins, even in the smallest ways, the more they believe in themselves. And belief is what fuels lasting change. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in success. Once progress starts building, it becomes easier to keep going. Small wins create a sense of movement, and that movement generates motivation. The hardest part of any journey is the beginning because there is no momentum yet. But once small actions accumulate, they create a force that drives further progress, making what once seemed difficult feel almost effortless. In the beginning, progress feels slow. The first day at the gym doesn't show results. The first few days of a new habit feel insignificant. But those initial steps are crucial because they set things in motion. A person who commits to writing just one sentence a day might feel like they aren't getting anywhere at first, but after a month, those small efforts add up and suddenly they have pages filled with ideas. This is how momentum works. It rewards those who stick with something long enough to see it build. Momentum isn't just about external results. It changes how people feel about themselves. When someone starts seeing even small improvements, they gain confidence. A person who exercises consistently for 2 weeks might not see major physical changes yet, but they start feeling stronger, more energetic, and more capable. That feeling makes them want to continue. The more they do, the more they believe in their ability to succeed. And the stronger that belief becomes, the harder it is to stop. Success isn't about intensity, it's about showing up, taking action, and allowing momentum to work in your favor. Most people quit because they don't feel like they're making progress. But what they don't realize is that momentum builds beneath the surface before it becomes visible. A snowball rolling down a hill starts small, but as it keeps moving, it gathers more snow, grows larger, and speeds up. The same happens with habits, discipline, and success. The small efforts that seem meaningless in the beginning are actually what create unstoppable momentum later. Once momentum is gained, it becomes harder to break. A person who has built a habit of reading every day doesn't have to force themselves to do it anymore. It feels natural. A disciplined individual doesn't have to rely on motivation to stay consistent because they have built a routine that carries them forward. Momentum removes resistance. It turns what once felt difficult into something automatic. The problem most people face is that they never stick with something long enough to let momentum take over. They expect quick results, and when they don't see them, they stop. But if they push just a little longer, if they allowed small wins to stack up, they would break through the point where effort turns into ease. The energy required to get something started is far greater than the energy needed to keep it moving. That's why the key is to focus on showing up, winning small, and letting progress compound. When momentum kicks in, success stops being a struggle and starts feeling inevitable. The biggest mistake people make when trying to improve their lives is thinking they need to make drastic changes all at once. They set massive goals, push themselves too hard in the beginning, and then burn out before they see results. But real progress doesn't come from extreme effort. It comes from small, consistent actions that are sustainable over time. The key to lasting success is starting small and staying consistent. When people set goals, they often feel excited in the beginning. They tell themselves they'll go to the gym every day, read a book a week, wake up at 5 a.m., or completely overhaul their diet. But after a few days, that initial excitement fades. Life gets busy, motivation runs out, and they start missing days. Eventually, they feel discouraged and give up entirely. This happens because they try to do too much too soon. Instead of building habits gradually, they rely on willpower, which is never a long-term solution. The smarter approach is to start small. Instead of aiming for an hour at the gym, commit to just 5 minutes of movement. Instead of reading for an hour, read 1 page. Instead of cutting out all unhealthy food at once, start by making 1 better choice a day. Small steps might not seem impressive at first, but they work because they are easy to maintain. And once they become automatic, they naturally grow into something bigger. Consistency is what turns these small actions into habits. When something becomes a habit, it no longer requires effort. It becomes part of who a person is. A runner doesn't have to force themselves to go for a run every day if they've built the habit over time. A disciplined person doesn't need motivation to work hard because consistency has already wired it into their identity. Small actions, repeated daily, become effortless. The key to consistency is making it so easy that failure is almost impossible. If a habit feels overwhelming, the brain resists it. That's why most people give up on big goals. They require too much effort. But when something is so small that it feels almost too easy, it removes all resistance. Doing 1 push-up doesn't feel like a big deal, but it's a step toward exercising regularly. Writing 1 sentence doesn't take much effort, but it leads to finishing a book. These small wins create momentum, and momentum makes consistency effortless. Over time, small habits naturally expand. A person who starts with 5 minutes of exercise often ends up doing more because it feels good. Someone who commits to writing 1 sentence often writes a whole paragraph because they're already in motion. The hardest part is getting started, but once a habit is in place, it grows on its own. The mistake people make is thinking that if something isn't big, it doesn't matter. But small actions, repeated over time, create massive results. The goal isn't to be perfect or to make huge changes overnight. The goal is to start small, stay consistent, and let time do the rest. Success isn't built on massive leaps. It's created through small, consistent actions that compound over time. The tiniest wins may seem insignificant in the moment, but they are the foundation of lasting transformation. Every small improvement, every consistent effort, and every choice to stay on track builds momentum. That momentum turns into habits, and habits shape identity. The key isn't to rely on motivation or willpower, but to make small, sustainable changes that become part of who you are. When you focus on progress rather than perfection, when you commit to consistency instead of intensity, and when you let your small wins reinforce a stronger identity, success becomes inevitable. Your future isn't determined by one big moment. It's shaped by the small choices you make every day. Start small, stay consistent, let the power of compounding work in your favor. Over time, those tiny wins will turn into something bigger than you ever imagined.